Hello and welcome to this week's Ask Amy. For decades, Houston has had a big problem with sexually oriented businesses masquerading as massage businesses. The dark tinted windows and shady storefronts and people coming and going at all hours of the day and night raise suspicions among neighbors and people passing by.
Oh, I'm not surprised at all. Everybody here has suspected or known what's going on there.
And experts say there's a connection between human trafficking and sexually oriented businesses like this now shut down illegal massage parlor.
The Fort Bend County Sheriff says it was a front for prostitution.
I mean, we thought something sketchy was going on, of course.
Deputies arrested 14 women for prostitution.
Neighbors had noticed an unusually high number of men coming and going.
The activity, they say, just didn't seem right.
These dark doors concealed a disturbing secret.
The question is, what do we do about these operations in our neighborhoods, near schools, near churches? My guest today is Elizabeth Hayes. She's a prosecutor with the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and you prosecute many of these businesses. We get these questions all the time. I mean, how are you able to do that? And does it look different today than sort of how it looked 10 years ago?
A lot of times, I definitely think it's changed as, we get different ideas. We have to adjust to what the workers at these locations are doing. Right now, we have a pretty good type of investigation. We have to send in undercover investigators in. They actually have to make a case. So they're wired up with some sort of audio recording. We want to make sure that we are getting the target to actually agree to a specific act for an amount of money. And as these investigations progress, we note that the employees are getting smarter. And so a lot of times, even though we have this audio recording, a lot of times they won't say anything. And so we have to rely on our officers doing a lot of the talking. And there's also a lot of visible motions, and there's a lot of just nodding up and down from the employee to whether they are agreeing. So we rely a lot on our undercover officers, both their audio recording and just their ability to testify about what's going on in the room.
So, I mean, in making these cases, that hasn't changed. I mean, it basically requires law enforcement officers visiting these businesses to try to figure out what's going on there.
Correct.
And it might be undercover. I know years ago, 20 years ago, we would hear from law enforcement agencies that, oh, well, it's very difficult because you have to go in and you're recording, but you almost have to, disrobe entirely to make a case, to say that, hey, there is some sort of sexual activity going on here. That's changed somewhat?
A little bit, and each agency has their standard operating procedures to protect their officers. But yeah, that is the problem, and that's been the problem for years, and we still have to deal with that, is that we actually have to prove that something illegal is going on. We can't just show up at a location where we think, yes, there's something illegal going on. We actually have to make a case. We actually have to have evidence that something illegal is going on. So that still requires our officers to conduct these investigations.
And that is where I think when people who say, hey, my daughter's gymnastics facility is right next door to this place, it's so obvious because you see people going in and out and, at all hours of the day and night. But it does require that extra step, those extra steps. But you have been able to prosecute some of these businesses from a different way, from a financial crime. Talk about that.
So I lead the money laundering section at the district attorney's office. And so what we're looking at are the people who are profiting off of this illegal activity, not necessarily the workers who are conducting the actual acts, but the people who are running these places, who are either behind the scenes or controlling, making the appointments, handling the utilities, paying for the advertisements, scheduling the employees. Those are the people who are behind the scenes and really profiting off of these women that are working. So what we like to do is when we find a viable target, we will start pulling all kinds of information from the state agencies, whether it's the Secretary of State or it's the Comptroller's Office or the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. We want to know who is the person who's opening this business, who's on perhaps if there's an LLC, or who has the DBA, who has the ownership records. If we're lucky, we're able to find out the bank records, the bank accounts that are facilitating this. You know, it used to be that a lot of these were cash intensive businesses, and that's still the case, but now we were seeing a lot of move to things like money-to-money transactions, Zelle, Cash App, PayPal,
Venmo.
using credit cards, that sort of thing. And so thankfully, that's given us a little bit more of a paper trail that we didn't always used to have. And so we can have our experts, the fraud examiners, take a look at the bank records, take that in conjunction with all of the paperwork we found from the Secretary of State or the Comptroller's Office, the licenses, and we work that along with the outside law enforcement agencies who are conducting the undercover surveillance. They're the one who's making the cases and proving that there's actual prostitution going on. And from there, we're still able to build a prostitution case. It's typically an aggravated promotion of prostitution case, but the investigation is financial. And that also allows us to go in and actually seize the illegal assets. We're able to prove that the money that's made on these types of businesses, illegal gains, and so the state law allows us to seize that. And I think that that's a really great tool, because when you get to take someone's money for their business, that's really hitting them hard, and that's what pushes them either to move out of the county, move into a different location, or just leave the business altogether. And obviously that's what we want to see. It's better for the community, better for the employees.
And obviously that sounds like you're attacking it sort of from the top, instead of maybe some of these raids decades ago where you went in and usually the people who were charged with the prostitution and these crimes where there's not as big of a penalty are the people working there.
Correct, and that's how it used to be. A lot of times we would go in and we would arrest the women who are conducting the prostitution, and then as we've learned, both with the prolific development of human trafficking, but also seeing that when we're arresting the women for prostitution, that's not doing anything to shut the business down. And so it's not making as big an impact as we would like. It's not changing things for the better in the community. And so our section developed this ability to, like you said, attack them from the top down. And when you get to the owners and you take their money away and you take their business away, you shut the business down, that is where we're able to see a great impact.
Yeah, I mean, and sort of this focus in recent years, probably the last 10 years on human trafficking, that maybe has helped to shift some of that and not to go after the women who, are you finding a lot of them are trafficked? Obviously, common sense question, but
it really, I would say yes, but it's still very difficult to determine just how bad it is, because a lot of times when we do talk to these women, we want to help them. We want to provide them resources, because this is a very tough world to get out of. It's a lot of control. It's a lot of manipulation. They have someone who's controlling everything about them, their movement, their finances, what they do, what they wear, what they eat, when they sleep. And so a lot of times, we have individuals who are trained to talk to these people, but a lot of times it's still difficult for the women to say, yes, I'm being trafficked. And so it's still difficult to glean, but we are seeing that by not arresting them is not furthering the purpose that we need to.
Got it. I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I'd like to talk with you just sort of about some of your cases that you've been able to prosecute and sort of successfully close down, because so many of them, it seems like you close them down and then the next day they open back up again.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll talk about a new law that actually just took effect to help in closing down some of these businesses. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this episode of Ask Amy. My guest today, Elizabeth Hayes. She's a prosecutor with the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and we're talking about massage spas, illegal massage spas all over Harris County and really all over the state.
Correct.
I mean, how successful have you been able to, from a prosecutor standpoint, close them down? Or is it an ongoing process with some of the cases you've started that are still pending?
I'd say both. It's been pretty successful, but a lot of our criminal cases are still working their way through the system. system. But as part of the investigations, at some point, we're executing search warrants and arrest warrants. And usually that's when we're able to go in and actually shut the places down. And while the cases are working through the system, we're keeping track of those places. So obviously we want to know if a location is opening back up while a defendant's case is still pending. So we are keeping track. As I described earlier with working from the top down, that generally is pretty successful at shutting the places down as well.
And you can find one owner in charge of multiple or who owns multiple.
Frequently. We usually have our owners, our operators typically are operating at least one or two locations, and frequently I would say up to 7, 8, or even 10.
Mm-hmm. I asked, I've lived in other parts of Texas, in Beaumont and San Antonio, and you don't see as many, certainly in the San Antonio area. And I was like, why is Houston and Harris County, why are they so prolific here? Any idea?
I would say it really has to do with the fact that Houston's one of the top ports, entry points for human trafficking. And so with immigration and the international flights coming in, we see a greater number of people from out of the country who are making it here, not necessarily under the best conditions and circumstances. So as soon as they're here, they need to work. They need to start working. Or they were brought here by someone here who told them, you're going to start working. So as soon as they land, as soon as they get to Houston, they get started.
Oh, wow. And just recently, in the last legislative session, there was a bill, House Bill 3579, that passed, that took effect this last September of 23. I want you to talk a little bit about that and if it has helped your job or just in general with the whole issue of these businesses popping up that are not legal.
I think both. Obviously, when making a criminal investigation, especially one as thorough as ours, it's time consuming and it takes a lot of resources. And so what the new law allows the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation and law enforcement agencies to do is it allows them this civil process to where if they have any kind of reasonable cause to believe that that location is connected to any kind of human trafficking, they can go in and shut those places down immediately. It's an emergency closure that's in effect for 6 months. And as long as they're staying on top of it and keeping track of it, it's another effective tool to get the place shut down. And for a lot of communities, that's sufficient. That's what they want. They don't necessarily care if criminal charges is filed as much as we want these types of businesses out of our city. And so we have used that several times already since it's been in effect, and it's worked very well. It's been very thorough. And again, we do have some of the agencies checking on those locations and some of those targets, and we have not seen them pop up yet. So far, it's been very effective. I think it's better for the community because it allows these, it's a quicker resolution to a big problem.
Right. I mean, 6 months is a long time if you're a business to have to remain closed.
It is.
I was asking, Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, they're inspecting and checking on these places that have licenses. I mean, how many of these places actually set out to pay for the license and have it hanging in their facility? I mean,
and that's we don't have the number specifically on how many of these locations are operating totally illegitimately without any licenses hanging on the wall. We just have to depend on our community members and our law enforcement agencies who are driving around and seeing, what's this business out here? Does that look legitimate? Let's go check it out. So that can be a problem because if they don't have a license, they're not on the radar, but we still have a responsibility to look at them. And again, not having a license is enough for the city to come in and shut them down as well. So even if they're flying under the radar, if we find, all of these different violations, we can still operate. We can still go in there and conduct the closure. We just have to be paying attention. We just have to do our due diligence.
And then, so what should people in the community know? I mean, when they see these, when they pass one, they're, annoyed, frustrated, worried about these in their neighborhood. What's the best course? What should they do? Who should they complain to?
I think the best course is to reach out to their local law enforcement agency, whether it's the constable's office, Houston Police Department, the sheriff's office. They all have their own vice teams that are set up to investigate these types of businesses. So I would recommend making a referral to them. They can always write letters to the Harris County District Attorney's Office as well, but I would recommend directly reaching out to the law enforcement agencies.
Because generally you're getting law enforcement agencies kicking cases over to you that are ready to prosecute.
They're the investigating agencies. We're helping them in other aspects, but they're the ones who are conducting the undercover operations.
All right. Elizabeth Hayes, thank you so much for coming in today. Is there anything I didn't ask you that people should know?
No, I think it's just really important to use your common sense when you see places like this. I would recommend not going, just avoiding them completely.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, we're going to hear from a representative of Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation and sort of how this new law is working from them for them day to day. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In our last segment, we talked about a new law, House Bill 3579. It took effect September 1st, and that law allows the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation to issue emergency closure orders to any massage business where human trafficking is suspected. To talk to us about what this all looks like in a practical sense day to day, Tila Mange is joining us from the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you guys have been successful in using this new law. It took effect in September of last year of 23. So how does it work in a practical sense? I mean, day to day, people call you and complain about spas in their area or what?
We receive complaints online from people out in the community. We also have inspectors who their job is to go out and look at massage establishments, beauty salons, cosmetology establishments, barbershops, toe places. There are different places that they go look just to make sure that everyone's keeping the records that they need to do, that the beauty salons are clean, that massage establishments are clean, that everyone is properly displaying their licenses. And when they go to a massage establishment, if they see certain things that we consider to be potential red flags for human trafficking, then they'll come back, they'll say, I have concerns about this particular establishment. And if there is enough information and there are enough indicators there, then we can go to the executive director of TDLR and ask for an emergency closure order. And that emergency closure order will force the establishment to close for 6 months. And during that time, we'll continue investigating. We'll pursue, if it's appropriate, enforcement actions against the establishment. And then at the end of the 6 months, either they're back in business or we might go back and say, really, we're revoking your license.
Can you tell us what those indicators might be? Because you've had multiple businesses. We can talk about how many, but when your inspectors go into a business, what are they looking for? I mean, licenses on walls, what else?
They're looking to make sure that the license on the wall matches the person who's providing the services or the person who owns the establishment. They're looking for, is there an excess amount of security? Do you have to get buzzed in to get into the establishment? Do you have to get buzzed in to get into the treatment rooms? Is there an ATM in the lobby? Are they open 24 hours? Does a lot of their advertising online involve talking about scantily clad women? When they go into the treatment rooms, are the massage therapists dressed appropriately? They're not supposed to be in lingerie or in anything that, in Texas we would call scanty. They need to be wearing appropriate professional clothing. Is there flavored massage oil? Are there condoms? Do there appear to be people living in the establishment as well?
Some things that I guess people would say would be pretty obvious telltale signs that this isn't just a normal massage business.
Right. Yeah.
And so how many of those places, since this new law took effect in September of 23, have you guys been able to put these emergency orders on to close them?
Our executive director has issued 5 emergency orders since the law went into effect. One of those emergency orders ended up including 8 different establishments across Southeast Texas. When we had issued the emergency order, the owner of that initial establishment said, you know what, never mind, I'll just quit. And so he signed an administrative order agreeing to the revocation of the massage establishment licenses and his massage therapist license, and agreed to not ever do business in Texas again as a massage therapist or a massage establishment owner. We later found that even though he had signed this agreement, that he had been still operating. And so we pursued a temporary injunction against him.
So that case is still ongoing. You had other places in Houston, Austin, and San Antonio?
That's correct.
And so I guess is that sort of the ideal, the way that it ends, that the owner just says, oh, okay, never mind, we'll close?
That certainly makes it a lot easier for us, and but we want to make sure that people are complying with the law. If someone receives this emergency order and in the course of the investigation we find that, you know what, everything was correct, everything, they were actually operating the way that they should have been, and there wasn't anything going on, then at the end of the 6 months they can get their license back.
It certainly puts a focus and more eyes on these establishments and businesses that for so long people thought, oh my gosh, there's nothing anyone can do about them. I mean, you drive past them every day and everyone and their brother knows what this business is, but it's like, why can't we get police or anybody to close them down? I'm not sure if you guys were getting those complaints before this law took effect, because it wasn't really your jurisdiction.
Well, I think we got complaints, and when we were able to do something about them, we did. But this certainly gives us extra power in being able to say these things are not right. You're not doing business the way that you should, and we need to make sure that there aren't employees who are being trafficked.
So the answer to the question, who do you call or contact if you suspect a massage business in your neighborhood is trafficking humans or operating illegally? You can call police, but now you should also file a complaint with the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. We are linking you to their complaint page on click2houston.com. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is also a good resource. That number is 888-373-7888. And if you have a question that I can help answer, email me at askamy@kprc.com. That's our show for today. Thanks for watching.